Welcome into Pony Pundits. My name's Kelly Stewart, joined by Sean Alvarez and Marco D'Angelo of WagerTalk.com. Today, we're breaking down the 150th Preakness. Guys, this one's kind of my favorite race for a magnitude of reasons. One, because I hit a trifecta in about 2014. I'm still living off those winnings. That was a fun one. And so it has kind of a different feel than the Derby. Marco, why do you like the Preakness? We know that the Derby's the granddaddy of it all. It gets all the attention, but the Preakness is kind of like my secondary. This is a really fun race to watch.
Well, if you've ever gone to a Preakness, which I haven't because, and I probably never will now because I am way too old to partake in the festivities of the infield of Pimlico, but that is an experience from people that I've talked to firsthand that you must try sometime. But Kelly, this is the second leg of the Triple Crown, and usually there's a lot of excitement with this race, just as much excitement as the Kentucky Derby, because we still have the possibility of a Triple Crown, except this year, because the Kentucky Derby winner has decided to bypass the Preakness and point towards the Belmont. So we have no possibility of a Triple Crown winner this year, and that takes a little bit of the luster off. And I can guarantee you, you talk to any bookmaker here in town, as we both do on a lot of shows that we do, none of them are happy because that really hurts the handle for them on a Saturday, in May for the Preakness. We know that if there's no Triple Crown, the Belmont, the final leg of the Triple Crown, was just another Saturday race in the sports book. Nobody really cares. But hopefully this year we get some action. We've got some popularity with some horses. Obviously, Journalism was the beaten favorite in the Derby. That'll get us, he's got a chance for redemption. And then, of course, Sandman, with the social media following that he got, that horse got totally overbet in the Kentucky Derby simply because of the power of social media. A social influencer that has, million followers. Well, they were following and they were betting, and he finished up the track. So a lot of subplots in this year's Preakness.
I do love fading in almost every single sport, the favorite on social media, right? Whether it's a square dog or a square horse. Sean, one thing I wanted to ask you before we get into it is kind of touch on what Marco said. I saw a lot of chatter on social media about, hey, there's a great reason why some horses should not be running, mainly because of a stud fee. But then Marco just mentioned he will be running in the Belmont. Can you tell me why these horse owners aren't trying to chase a Triple Crown? Does it just not matter anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that not necessarily it doesn't matter, but before American Pharoah, the last Triple Crown winner was back in the 70s with, I believe it was Citation. So it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do. And you're looking at these horses that are just going into their 3-year-old campaign with starting in February, March, April, just to try and qualify for the Kentucky Derby. So it is a very taxing kind of 3 to 4 months leading up into the Kentucky Derby. And then 2 weeks, they turn right around and, ship up to Maryland into Baltimore and try to race for the Preakness. So it's definitely not the easiest thing to do. And, I tip my cap to the trainers and the owners that don't necessarily force their horses into these big races just for, the fame, or like you said, stud fees later when you're a Preakness winner or black type placed. But they're taking care of their horses. And, in previous years, we've seen a lot of, 3-year-old champions, Triple Crown winners, whether it was American Pharoah or Justify, but we've seen a lot of, higher end 3-year-old colts immediately go to studding after their 3-year-old career. So while I completely agree with what everybody's saying, I wish we had the Kentucky Derby winner in this race so that at least we had a little bit of a Preakness or Triple Crown possibility. But, with that being said, I hope that a lot of these, 3-year-olds that we see running in these Triple Crown races, we start to see them race into their 4- and 5-year-old careers, maybe even getting more stakes placed and more stakes, wins in their career, which would eventually bump up their stud fee. But with that being said, it's still, these horses cost a lot of money. And owners and trainers don't necessarily want to gamble, if you will, on, those horses not getting hurt and affecting their stud fees later on. So it's really a double-edged sword on, giving yourself a possibility to win the Triple Crown, but also taking, the best care you can of that horse.
Very good point. As the gambling trio here, I understand why I think it seems like a good idea to gamble, but those guys are businessmen. And who would know better than Marco D'Angelo, who actually breeds and races horses, been doing so since before I was born. Marco, congratulations. You nailed the Kentucky Derby for your clients. And I'm hoping you can do the same for the Preakness. MD10, that is your coupon code, gets you all of Marco's selections for the Preakness, MLB, NBA, and NHL playoffs. Of course, $39, and you're going to save $10 with coupon code MD10. Marco, let's get into this 9-horse field, significantly smaller, of course, than the Kentucky Derby. Let's just go right down the post position line. Start off here with goal oriented.
Yeah, goal-oriented is Bob Baffert's replacement for Rodriguez. If Rodriguez wouldn't have got scratched out of the Kentucky Derby, odds are he probably would not have raced goal-oriented in this race. It would have been Rodriguez's race. But he's in here. This is a late-blooming 3-year-old colt. This is only going to be his third career start. What makes it even tougher than that is his first start wasn't until April 6th. So you're asking this horse to make up a lot of ground against these horses that are much more seasoned than he is to pull off an upset here. But he does have a big shot. And the reason why, the first 2 starts he had, he put up 91 buyer speed figures. Those are pretty impressive numbers out of the chute. Also, his racing style. He's got the rail. Flavian Pratt's got one choice with him, and that is to bust out of the gate and go to the lead, get to the first turn with the lead, and try to control this race. That's going to be what I see happening him with another horse on the front end. If it gets soft fractions, this is a horse that could hang around for a long time. We've seen Bob Baffert do this in the past. The problem is these are going to be seasoned horses that are going to be sitting off his back. I think he can hang on in this race for the exacta or the trifecta, but I just don't see this horse having enough seasoning to be able to beat some of the better horses in this race. But don't just totally pitch the horse. He definitely is on the exotics, exactas and tries.
All right, let's go into the Kentucky Derby favorite. That is Journalism. I know a lot of us had him in our exactas and our trifectas and our superfectas. Let's hear about him here as well. Pretty close to the odds-on favorite. Umberto is my dad's new favorite jockey, even though he did not win the Kentucky Derby. It's funny to see how some of these jockeys and or owners, there's allegiances here in sports betting. And my dad has a ton of allegiance towards a couple of those guys, but few of them have retired at this point in time. So he has a new fan favorite here in Umberto.
I love that, jump onto one of the hottest jockeys in the country. And yeah, the number 2 Journalism coming out of that Kentucky Derby race as the post-time favorite. It's still a short price to swallow at 8-5, but this is the best 3-year-old in this 3-year-old colt crop. So, and that's well warranted with his buyer speed figures. He ran a really good race, jumping up to a big 108 buyer speed figure in the San Felipe, but he just hasn't really taken that step forward again since then. You look back in the Kentucky Derby, he had a little bit of a rough trip early on, but as we've spoken about before in the Kentucky Derby, it's not about getting the perfect trip. It's about working out the trip that you get. And he ran a big race, but Sovereignty ran a bigger race. And there's not a lot as far as the buyer speed figures go that can compete with Journalism. And he's also going to sit that, really tactical middle trip. So there's not a lot to knock about this this morning line favorite. However, he is wheeling back in 2 weeks. Michael McCarthy, not necessarily the trainer in mind when, wheeling his horses back. He does have a decent clip rate at 22%, but he only has 23 starts wheeling back in those 14 days. So, a big step up for this horse, kind of doing something that he's never done before. So if you want to knock a hole in the favorite, that would probably be what I would lean on. But, he's a well-deserving morning line favorite as easily the best horse in this field.
All right, let's get into American Promise here, Marco. This was another horse that I think got quite a bit of love last go around. Talk to me about Nick Juarez and why maybe you think they have a shot to win this whole thing.
Well, Kelly, when I look at this horse, and you hit the nail on the head about this being the wise guy horse in the Kentucky Derby. A lot of people were loving this horse. I personally did not like this horse going into the Derby, but I actually like this horse going into the Preakness, and I'll explain why. Most people are going to look at the racing form and look at that performance in the Kentucky Derby, see that the horse finished way back and was a big disappointment. And to quote our partner in a horse that you and I own, Kelly, our buddy Johnny Detroit, they're going to look and say this horse should be heading to the glue factory after that Kentucky Derby race. But now I got to explain why, just like I have to do to Johnny after every race when we don't win. The horse, if you watch the replay and looked at what happened to the horse in the race, you can understand why the horse backed through the field. First of all, when the gate sprung, this horse's intentions was to go towards the lead. Unfortunately, he got hit coming out of the gate, which had Nick Juarez to have to go to plan B. Plan B was an immediate left-hand turn to the rail to try to save ground. Well, when he was down at the rail, he pushed the panic button because he didn't want to get caught way back at the rail and tried to rush the horse up into contention. He was too close to a very hot contested pace in the Kentucky Derby. The fractions were too fast. That's what set it up for the horses that came from behind. Not only was he too close to the pace, but then he made a move trying to split the two horses in front of him that were on the lead. When he tried to split those two horses, he went right in between the two horses and it closed up, and he had to check the horse. You can't check a horse and lose his momentum. So he got hit at the start, went to the rail, was used too hard to get into contention, then tried to make a move, then was checked, and then back through the field. Well, once he was back and through the field, people are going to overreact to that. The only smart move Juarez made in that was once he knew he wasn't going to get any money in a Derby, quit riding on the horse. Save the horse for his next race. Now, if people will look at that race line and say, is there something wrong with him? Well, you got your answer that there's nothing wrong with him because he's right back in 2 weeks. Dwayne Lucas is a Hall of Fame trainer. He's not going to run a horse back in 2 weeks if the horse is not healthy and fit and ready to go. I think you're going to get a big price on American Promise. Don't pitch the horse. I think he can make amends in this race. There's not a lot of speed in here. And if he breaks from the gate cleanly, he's going to be sitting right behind the two pace setters on what I think are going to be moderate fractions, not suicide fractions in this race. He can hang on, be a big part of the ticket at a price.
All right, 15-1 is kind of speaking more of my language. And of course, people love, horse names, right? There's a couple here back to back. Heart of Honor just kind of speaks to me. And I'm like, I love that name. But neither one of you guys put that horse in your selections for this video. Sean, can you tell me why?
Yes. So this is a horse coming over from Dubai. We kind of more talk about that, that trip over from Dubai or even over from Japan leading up into the Kentucky Derby. But we've got another one here that ran second to Admire Daytona. And that was one of the top Japanese horses that ran in the Kentucky Derby. However, Admire Daytona ran dead last in the Kentucky Derby. So his form isn't necessarily being backed up with that second place finish in the UAE Derby back in April. So I don't necessarily like his form coming into this. His trainer isn't necessarily known for bringing his horses over into North America. And now the horse is kind of stepping up into not necessarily the toughest company. It's not, a Kentucky Derby type field, but, we still have the likes of Journalism, River Thames, and the likes of others that are just a little bit better than those type of crops. So I don't necessarily like his form. I hate the trip of coming over. If anything, I like the trip coming over and getting a race, under his belt before jumping up into a race like the Preakness. So I don't like what he did in Dubai. I don't like the shipping angle. And, I think the trainer, maybe not necessarily over his head, but, he's stepping up into class as well.
One of the longest odds horse here, 20-1. But my favorite name on the list, Marco, Pay Billy. Another horse neither one of you have on your list for, exactas or tries. Marco, what's going on with the horse in position number 5?
Well, Kelly, if you like this name, Pay Billy, is that one of your bookies, or you have to pay Billy all the time, or what? You shouldn't like that name. You should want to, be paid by Billy. But this one, pure and simple. This is a local horse. Every year, you'll see one horse that'll get into the Preakness with local connections and high aspirations, and just literally no shot. And that's what Pay Billy is. The horse has had 8 career starts. He has improved every single race with his buyer speed figure over the last 6. That's a good sign. The problem is his highest speed figure is 85. He's going to need about 15 more points to be in contention to win the Preakness of what it's going to take to win this race. And the fact that he has 8 career starts, we talked about that in the Derby. I don't like horses that, enter the Derby when they've got 8, 9, or 10 starts already, because they basically are what they are. They're not going to make that big jump that you'll see with horses that only have 2 or 3 starts and have nowhere near peaked yet. This horse is what he is. I don't see him. He's pure and simple, just not fast enough. It's a nice story. Local owners, local connections. The horse is racing well, but he's been doing it against very mediocre competition. Pass for me.
All right, Sean, the horse currently as the odds-on favorite, you and Marco both have on your list. River Thames, is this the horse that's going to win the whole thing, or are they just getting a little too much love in the marketplace and you should just be putting them in your exactas and tries?
Yeah, this is another horse that I definitely like you alluded to, and I'm glad Marco does too, because I didn't like Sovereignty, so he's one up on me in the Triple Crown races so far. But this is another horse that has that tactical speed, very similar to journalism. He's not necessarily a need the lead type of horse, but he breaks well from the gate and he gets into stride well. So I really like the fact that he doesn't need a quick pace to run into. And if they slow down, then he's, in touch with those type of leaders to be able to make that first run and try to run down, whoever's on the lead in the likes of journalism. So I do really like the tactical speed of this horse. You have a really good human connection in Todd Pletcher and Irad Ortiz. And we spoke about Sovereignty, the Kentucky Derby winner, skipping the Preakness. This is a horse that had enough points to get into the Kentucky Derby, and the ownership and trainer thought to themselves that this is what they said. They said the Kentucky Derby isn't for this horse. We're going to skip it. The Preakness is a little bit of a better spot for him. But if you watch his bluegrass race, he just didn't look like he was getting into stride very well. He technically looked exhausted. His ears were pinned back, but he never gave up. And he ran a really good 3rd place finish behind Burnham Square in that race and East Avenue. Horses that we liked kind of going into that Kentucky Derby. So I do like that 3rd place effort last time out. And he's got 3, listed works on his work tab, working well leading up into this. I like the fact that it wasn't necessarily a scratch in the Kentucky Derby. They wanted to give this horse a little bit of time off. Let's target the Preakness. Maybe we go to the Belmont after that, but we think our best shot is in the Preakness. And, who am I to argue with the likes of Todd Pletcher?
All right. If you are looking for Sean's full card selections, that's right. That's Black Eyed Susan Day there on Friday. And of course, Saturday for the Preakness. Sean has all of his wagers up on WagerTalk.com right now. WT.buzz/SA. No coupon code is going to be needed here, guys. Just $30 for his Friday and Saturday selections. Marco, let's talk about Sandman. We kind of laughed, we kind of alluded to at the beginning of the show. A lot of people love this horse in the Derby, and it became a square horse, if you will. Right now, currently sitting at 4-1 in the 7th post position, and you left him off your list once again.
I did. And Kelly, this is a horse that you should absolutely love, because Sandman tweets well. He does TikToks well. And it's all thanks to Griffin Johnson, part owner in here, a social influencer. And, as far as it going for the sport of horse racing, I love it. It's bringing new eyeballs to the track, and it's bringing younger eyeballs. But as far as value, Sandman was overbet in the Derby. He'll be overbet here. Never fired in the Derby. The only excuse that he can make is, well, that was his first time on a sloppy track and he didn't like it. Well, there were other horses in that race that it was the first time over a sloppy track too, and they did pretty well. I can't make an excuse for him. This is one of those horses that also has a lot of starts, so he is basically what he is at this point in his career. He got the perfect setup in the Derby because they went fast fractions. That's what you want to see for the closers, and it worked out well for Journalism and Sovereignty. And when Sovereignty started his move, guess who was right next to him? Sandman. And he left Sandman in the dust. So this is a horse that, can he run on the very bottom of the ticket if you're using trifectas in the third spot, superfectas in the fourth spot? Yeah, but I don't see him as a contender to win this particular race. So he's not on my top 4, as you'll find out in a few minutes.
All right, Clever again in the 8th spot here with my favorite jockey, Jose Ortiz. Sean Alvarez, break down this horse, and if you think they have a shot to win it all, currently 5-1.
Yeah, so this is the horse that, Marco kind of alluded to when speaking about the number 1, Clever Again, Goal Oriented. The number 8, Clever Again at 5-1. This is another one of those speed horses that could either clear the field or, give a little bit of fits to that Bob Baffert trained horse on the rail. He's very quick out of the gate. And like I said about other horses, he gets into stride well, and he's got a very high cruising speed. My only real knock about the horse is he's coming over from the 8 spot. If the Baffert horse breaks well from the gate, he's also quick. Journalism's quick out of the gate. The number 6 River Thames is quick out of the gate. So, it's really going to be, let the horse break. Let's see what he does and what other horses do. Does he have enough speed to make it over and clear that field, or does he have to sit off? Because if the number 1 breaks quick and, sets point for that lead, and the number 8 and Jose try to do the same thing, I think they're going to be cooking quick early. And I think that that's going to really hinder both of their chances. So definitely a player. And like I said, especially if the number 1 doesn't break well. The number 1's kind of been not necessarily known to not break well. He only has 2 starts in his career, but has been kind of left at the gate before and then got into that cruising speed. So it's really going to really depend on how they break out of the gate, because I don't necessarily like Clever Again's chances if he has to set off the pace. They haven't necessarily tried to do it, but he hasn't shown to do it. And now he's going to jump up from a listed stakes race into the Preakness.
All right, Marco, the name of the horse that is going to screw me up, Gosger. What is the Gosger? And who came up with this name?
I think it's actually named after a baseball player. Sean would know more, being the baseball guy with memorabilia. But this is a lightly raced 3-year-old, only 3 career starts. The problem is in those 3 career starts, he does have 2 wins and a second. But his 2 wins, the first one came in his second start, a maiden race. Okay, so again, those can be good. Those could be soft fields. But then his second win did come in a stake race. However, it was the Lexington. And I don't know how Sean feels about this year's Lexington. I thought it was an absolute weak field in the Lexington Stakes this season. So that win, although, it was a jump up in class for him, I don't think he really beat top caliber horses. The other problem for him here in the Preakness is post position 9. His running style is he likes to be in a stalking position. From post 9, he's not going to be able to get into a good position, in my opinion, before they hit the first turn. The first turn at Pimlico comes up pretty quick, and you don't want to be caught wide going into that first turn in this race. So I think he's going to be back a little bit further than he wants to be. And as I alluded to at the beginning, although there are a couple speed horses in this race, I really don't particularly see this being a fast-paced race for him to be able to make up ground from sitting a little bit further back than he's normally accustomed to. So for me, I've left him off my top 4.
All right, speaking of top four, we're going to get into those top four selections. Sean Alvarez, I'm going to let you go first. I'm going to go ahead and say Fitz too. These are horses that need to be bet to win, play, show, be in your exacta box, be in your try, superfecta. Tell us exactly how you would like everyone to bet these selections.
Yeah, so my first selection, like I spoke about, I had the lucky fortune to speak about it previously, is that number 6, River Thames. I like that they give this horse a little bit of a break. I think that he's training well, probably needed that little bit of a refresher. He looked tired in the bluegrass. And I just, like I said, who am I to argue with Todd Pletcher and Irad Ortiz? So that's going to be my number one, or my top pick. I would like to play him to win. I like the price. I'm not necessarily going to swallow those short odds in the number 2 journalism, which is my second choice. And obviously I spoke about this horse as well. So I'm not going to hang my hat too high on this. I wouldn't necessarily play him to win. I don't like those short odds. I think there's plenty of value on, the Friday undercard as well as this Saturday undercard. So if you want to win bet, I would look at other races than putting down on journalism. And I do like the number 1 goal oriented. I think that he's going to be the pace or the speed of this race. He's trained by Bob Baffert. He hasn't necessarily broken well, but if you watch what he does after he breaks, I would say poorly for a Bob Baffert trained horse, he gets into stride really quickly. And, his hands kind of forced with, get in that rail position post draw. So I think him and Flavian go. And with that being said, I don't think Jose is going to push the issue with the number 8. So he may get kind of left on the lead. And, if he gets soft fractions like we saw, just 2 years ago with National Treasure, another Bob Baffert horse, if they just kind of forget about him on the lead, I don't think he's coming back to this field. So this would be another one that if you want a little bit more of a price, I'd play him on the win in, but I would definitely use him on top and underneath in the exacta. And then I'm going to go a big old bomb that Marco just talked about, the number 9 Gosger that just Googled it. I believe it was Jim Gosger, if they're naming it after a baseball player. I believe he retired in 1974. So a little bit before my time. But we talk about how other horses can win the race, and, River Thames is going to sit off the pace. Journalism's going to sit off the pace. And, we've seen it in the past where, jockeys get a little bit too aggressive, or, they know their time is now, but their horse isn't necessarily running well. And we kind of get, a big old price to kind of sit off of it. They're not necessarily, obviously they're trying for the win, but I don't think Brendan Walsh has given Luis Saez a leg up saying, hey, at 20-1, I think we've got a big shot. I think he's going to, tell him to get his horse comfortable. Let's see what he's made of. And, horses like that can kind of clunk up for, second and third place. I definitely would not play him on the win in, but if we can get something like 20, or even if he floats up to 30-1 in second or third, we can get paid, even if it's a shorter field than the Kentucky Derby.
All right. Shorter field equals more money, right, Marco? Better chances to win. Am I doing it right? No, all jokes aside, can you please give me your top 4 selections for the 150th Preakness?
All right. This race starts and finishes with journalism, and 8-5 short odds. But I'm going to tell you, if this horse goes off at 8-5, I will be sending it through the window on him. That it was a fantastic price. That would be an overlay. He should be shorter odds in this particular field. He got beat in the Kentucky Derby, yes, but he didn't do anything wrong. The situation of the Derby and what happened in the Derby, this is another horse that got hit coming out of the gate. So he had to alter his game plan, go to plan B. Umberto Rispoli did what he needed to do. He went to the rail as quickly as he could to save ground around the first turn. He didn't panic. He kept the horse back off of those fast fractions and waited his time. He waited to find a spot to get the horse actually from off the rail into the outside so he could make a move. And when he made that move, he made it big time coming around the turn. Now, the only thing I will say that I think Umberto did wrong is I think he hit the go button just a couple seconds too soon, because this horse responded like a rocket, and he passed horses around that turn like they were standing still. And when they came off the turn into top of the lane, he went past the last horse that he had in front of him too soon. And sometimes with young horses, and trust me, I've been there, I've seen it with my horses, that when they pass all the horses and there's nobody left in front of them, they ease up a little bit. They don't have a target to go after. They think the race is done. They won. And what happened is Sovereignty just got the better trip. Sovereignty got to follow him the whole way around the turn, followed him off the top of the turn, and then coupled him in the stretch. They had a little bit of a stretch battle, and Sovereignty went by him. I am here to tell you that if you reverse the two trips, Journalism would have beaten Sovereignty. It was just one of those races where the two best horses finished 1-2. One of them just got a slightly better trip. So for me, this is all about Journalism, and I'm going to be keying him first and second with all of my exotics. Now, if there's a horse that can upset him, my number 2 selection is number 8, Clever Again. This is a horse that Sean previewed for you. This is a horse, only 3 career starts. He's got 2 wins in a second. He raced once as a 2-year-old to get experience, and then they shut him down, brought him back, started his first start in late February. This is then his second start, a wire-to-wire fashion, posting an 87 buyer. He came back 5 weeks later in the hot springs, went wire-to-wire again, and jumped up from an 87 buyer to a 101 buyer. That's a huge jump, and that's what you see in these young horses. And I think you got another one coming from him on Saturday. And that 101 buyer, he's the only other horse other than Journalism in this field that's had a triple-digit buyer. And he's got every license to be even better. And this is the 3rd start off of a layoff. That has been one of my favorite angles for years. That's the best race in a horse's form cycle. So for me, I think this horse has a big shot. He will lead from post 8. He doesn't have to go to the lead. He's going to lead for position. I think he's going to be sitting second when they hit that first turn, just off of the flank of goal oriented, and then they'll go from there. Third, I already talked about him. My 3rd choice in the race is American Promise. I think he is a price. And then the last horse that I think has a good shot, anytime I see an owner and a trainer that's eligible for the Kentucky Derby to bypass the Kentucky Derby to point to this race, I'm going to take notice. Every owner wants to win the Kentucky Derby. But if they think their better shot is here, they were eligible to the Derby, I'm going to stand up and listen to that. And he has the perfect style. This horse has tactical speed. He will be sitting just off the pace setters. So he'll have that first jump when it's time to make a move. I think this horse is a big factor in this race. So for me, it's Journalism on top. And then the next 3 horses I'll be using underneath in all kinds of combinations, exactas, and trifectas.
All right, guys. You know what I want you to do? Jump in the comment section here. Tell me your top 4 horses for this year's Preakness. And of course, thank you guys for always hanging out with us here on Pony Pundits. We'll be back for the Belmont, maybe for the Breeders' Cup this fall as well. Thank you to Marco. Thank you to Sean. And again, thank you to all of you guys. Please do not forget to hit that like button, give us that thumbs up, and of course, subscribe to the WagerTalk YouTube channel so you never miss another show.